past 20 years, Louise has worked in a broad variety of designated lived and living experience roles. Louise's seminal 15-year program of research has supported the growth in understanding, awareness, and development of lived experience workforces nationally and internationally, and helped shape the perspective of lived experience work as a respected, credible, evidence-based discipline. Louise's work as a strategic consultant, trainer, and thought leader on the role and benefit of lived experience workforces assists meaningful implementation of the research findings and promotes an evidence-informed approach to lived experience workforce development. Welcome, Louise, one of the most authentic and passionate people around lived experience that I know.
Thank you, Helena. Well, I wasn't feeling sort of teary and raw enough. Nearly had the dam break then. So my thing's up. Oops. Thank you, Lyndon, for an incredible, heartwarming welcome to Gubbi Gubbi Country. I also pay my respects to elders past and present and thank them for their cultural knowledge and deep connection to land, sea and community. I pay heartfelt respect to these essential leaders and thank them for their guidance broadly across the service system, but also, as you'll hear a bit in my address today, personally in my own life and personal journey, professional journey as well, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I'd like to recognise all the folk attending who have their own significant lived and living experience and pay respect to the giants who came before us, as Ivan mentioned earlier, blazing these trails and upon whose shoulders we do stand. And as Helena's mentioned several times, I, like most of us, have just lost so many heroes and friends. And it's so special to hear them spoken about repeatedly throughout the day because they belong here with us at what I see as a more celebratory occasion. So, you know, let's really embrace that. I like that. They're walking with me. They're walking with us. I would particularly like, and this is funny, I didn't know Helena was introducing me, but I already had this in my talk. I'd particularly like to thank my dear friend and colleague, Helena Roenfeld, who's been such a critical partner for over a decade in all the work that I've done and is joining me again on a brand new journey. So thank you. For those of me, like me, with low vision, I'm a middle-aged woman of medium height and weight with long brown hair, fair skin and glasses, and I answer to she or they pronouns happily. Good morning, everyone. I feel like I'm introducing myself anew. I have a confession to make. Although I've been told many times that I appear confident and comfortable speaking in public, the truth is I have crippling social anxiety. I'm a major introvert. I barely leave the house. I have autism, an acquired brain injury, complex trauma history, profound hearing loss, which even with hearing aids frustrates communication, particularly in complex sound environments. And altogether means I'm battling a lifetime of being terrified of people and getting things wrong to try and bring something meaningful and thought-provoking to a program which is filled with wonderful ideas and presentations. Yes, I feel the pressure. Usually I fake it and have a meltdown when I get home. I'm not joking, that's exactly what I do. But I'm too weary these days to spend the energy to present a polished fiction. So particularly at a summit for us, by us, I feel a need to show up authentically as myself. I would therefore like to start with something very personal that Thank you. I would like to start with something very personal. I've never shared in public. This is just a little private thing that I use to ground myself, and I hope that it may similarly provide a moment of calm for others as we begin our days together. Many of you are familiar with how centering deep breathing is and how that breath brings mind and body together so we can be present with our attention and our intention. Some of you may also be familiar with the Celtic shamanic tradition of soul retrieval or gathering, particularly for folks who've experienced significant trauma. In that process, the parts of us that have flown off, splintered off, seeking safety during difficult times, are lovingly collected and reintegrated into the self. So I've written a mantra to support that process for myself. And today I'd like to share it with you, and I invite you to join me in whatever capacity you feel able. The words are on the screen. I'm going to sing it 3 times, so you've got a chance to kind of join in if you like, and also for myself. Feel free to sing, clap, sway, dance, or just close your eyes and imagine the scattered pieces of your own attention, energy, and emotions gathering and coming home to assist you to feel more whole in this moment. I think I've got a lapel mic so you can still hear me, so I don't have to hide behind, because I want to be open and I want to be vulnerable, like in this moment. Hopefully I'll remember to hit the right note. Come to me, all my pieces, scattered pieces, fractured pieces. Come to me, all my pieces, join me in the now. Come to me, all my pieces, scattered pieces, fractured pieces. Come to me, all my pieces, join me in the now. Come to me, all my pieces, scattered pieces, fractured pieces. Come to me, all my pieces, join me in the now. Thank you. Okay. Shout it out. What do you think allows and enables the most effective, sustainable development of authentic, lived and living experience workforces?
Strong lived experience leadership.
Sorry, what was that?
Strong lived experience leadership.
Strong lived experience leadership, non-negotiable. What else have we got? Pardon me?
Connected to the movement.
Connect with the movement. Be guided by the movement, informed by the movement, or the communities, the multiple communities. Great. Organizational culture. Look at your organizational culture. Make sure that it's inclusive, yeah? Make sure that it's genuinely welcoming us and making space for us to do what we do. Anyone else? What was that one?
Training and development.
You bet. Put the things in place. Put the things in place so that we can actually do what we do properly and we can teach other people about it. And I love training and development as the last point because they're all really good points, but that was a nice segue. Thank you very much. My great obsession for many years now is the effective development of our workforces with an unrelenting focus on authentic ways of viewing and doing that were defined and refined by us for us. Fidelity to the discipline of lived expertise. This is a journey that began for me back in the late 90s. I was 19 when I started working at Dalrymple Youth Service, a First Nations-led service in my hometown where I'd experienced appalling involuntary admissions, homelessness, abuse of many descriptions, suicide, problematic drug and alcohol use, etc. And I passionately wanted to contribute to change with all the vigour of youth. At that time, I hadn't heard of lived experience work. This was last century, folks, but I had little else to offer the young people accessing the service. So, of course, it was my comparable and similar experiences that I drew from within that role. By 2004, I had been introduced to peer work and I managed to convince the local health and hospital service to employ me in what was the first paid designated position in my district. Of note, I think this is really a key point. There was a stark contrast between the way my use of lived and living experience was accepted and welcomed within several First Nations youth services I worked for in non-designated roles as a young person, and all of the subsequent designated lived experience positions that I've had. I never remember the validity or the usefulness of drawing on my lived experience being queried in those non-designated youth roles. However, in different ways and to different degrees, every designated role I've ever had to this day, I've needed to defend the credibility of drawing on lived expertise. Now, some of that will no doubt be due to First Nations perspectives on lived and living experience and how intrinsically valuable and necessary it is accepted to be within community to bring that lived and living experience to everything that we do. But I find this also to be of interest. In my personal life, since moving into designated positions 21 years ago now, so like a good whack of time, every time I've been asked to explain what I do for a living by someone who is not working in the community or social service sectors, the response is an immediate and resounding affirmation. Why haven't I heard about this before? That makes total sense. How can I access a peer worker? And so on. So, anecdotally, a bit sticky, in some settings, i.e. First Nations and in life generally, the concept and usefulness of drawing from lived expertise is usually well received and welcomed with a minimal explanation. But as I said, I've worked in a wide variety of designated roles over more than 2 decades, and in government and non-government, higher education, doing peer support, education and training, systemic advocacy, research and consultancy, and across all those roles and settings. The single most important ingredient to embracing and allowing lived and living experience roles to thrive and have meaningful impact are the beliefs and attitudes of people in other positions. Unfortunately, for a range of reasons, people within service settings have proven, on the whole, far more resistant, on average, to the common sense appeal of lived and living expertise. So this realization initially led me to conduct research and later to focus the research on how to message and explain our work to increase respect, collaboration, and ultimately embedding our principles and approaches. A major finding of the research was how necessary exposure to lived and living experience concepts and practice is. So what we found is a reliable cycle of events occurring when people in various roles are exposed to authentic lived and living experience work and concepts. From this exposure, and authentic is really the key word again here, authentic lived and living experience concepts. From this exposure, understanding of our work increases. This then leads to an increase in the perceived value of what we do and bring. Enhanced valuing results in greater commitment, investment, and tangible actions taken to support and expand lived experience workforces. The evidence is compelling. Whole of sector education is the bedrock upon which we build sustainable and effective lived and living experience workforces. As such, it's a key recommendation of numerous policies globally, including Queensland and national workforce development guidelines. So whole of workforce understanding is so important because it fosters increased organisational commitment and investment. It helps facilitate a workplace culture, as someone mentioned before, that accepts lived experience, like little l, little e, lived experience, and lived expertise, as in designated work, as valuable and essential. That's non-negotiable non-negotiable. It contributes to organisational policies and processes that support authentic lived experience work and help maximise the potential benefits of our work while, very important, reducing the psychological hazards for us and others. It's foundational to creating safe spaces for people accessing services, their family, friends, kin, supporters, and significant others, as well as all staff. That's a whole lot of benefits. And this really is a sticky. In the process of building lived and living experience literacy to grow understanding, all of that stuff we just talked about, and increase that perceived value, the way ideas are communicated was found to be particularly important. So not just what's being said, but how it's conceptually being sold and lands for different cohorts, different people. With trial and error gradually refining over a 15-year period, we found reliable ways to deliver information that are well understood and accepted by broad audiences, including, and this is important, folk who have previously been disinterested or defensive and had barriers with lived experience work. This doesn't mean mincing words in any way, shape, or form, holding back on speaking truth, but the order of delivery, building or scaffolding the learning is really important, as is establishing the mainstream credibility of the sources, and finally, packaging it all up in a way that is indisputably logical and addresses or answers common queries, myths, and misconceptions to leave the least room for doubt. Because in a way, that's what we're trying to push against, is people's worries and their doubts, yeah? It's my informed opinion we will not see substantial investment in lived experience-led organisations that are funded to be independent and hold fidelity to our discipline, or lived and living experience leadership that's genuinely embedded within multidisciplinary environments, again, as a non-negotiable, until and unless broad understanding and credibility for our work is established. It needs to be a given. So for many years now, it's been my life's mission to develop, test, refine, and diversify a range of responses to common attitudinal barriers to our work, and to increase that understanding and valuing of our collectively derived work practices, values, and principles, to promote our experientially gained knowledge as not only valid, but essential expertise, a core informing and guiding discipline to progress the reform agenda and facilitate services that genuinely help instead of harm. Most recently, the Lived Experience Training.org team, Mel and Sean and Helena and myself, have synthesized all of those learnings into a suite of highly accessible trainings, and we are thrilled to share, you've probably heard it already, but very excited to share that the Queensland Mental Health Commission has funded full access to both the flagship orientation training, there's some info on the screen for that one, and the next slide will show you the next lot of training, and deeper dive regional understanding and planning sessions to promote commitment to and investment in lived and living experience workforces. We have never in this country, and I'm not aware of it anywhere in the world, had a statewide whole of sector education opportunity quite like this. The training is free for entire organisations across the state and across sectors. In the longer term, there will be more training and opportunities to advance our workforce well beyond what we're able to provide today. It's a rapidly evolving space, and there are other valuable initiatives, some of which I'm assisting to develop, that will likewise be effective in increasing understanding and valuing of lived expertise. However, today, there is nothing else I'm aware of internationally that's funded to potentially reach the entire workforce, which is exactly what we need, the entire workforce, across sectors, and encapsulates a robust, rigorously tested and approved lived and living experience evidence base the way this does, that speaks broadly across sectors and specialisations to provide baseline understanding and foster enthusiasm for collaborating with us across role types. The training provides an opportunity for the wider workforce to develop shared language, concepts, and definitions guided by us. It highlights key benefits of our work and explains why designated roles, informed by the collective knowledge base, are so crucial. From this bedrock understanding, authentic and sustainable lived and living experience workforce development can more effectively grow. However, again, if it's not well utilised, of course, there's a risk that it won't be repeated on this scale, at least not for some time, and that would be a damn shame and a waste. We want this to be the first of many comprehensive education campaigns that increase respect and utilisation of our workforces in meaningful ways. And truly, it is up to all of us to play a role in making that happen. Now, when I was first drafting this talk, I didn't actually realise so many wonderful colleagues and friends would be joining us from interstate. So I'm very glad this forum has received the national attention it so richly deserves. Unfortunately, at this point, for other states and territories, we don't have the same funded rollout yet. But it's all only been launched since July last year, so we're hoping, and you can help us advocate for that. It is still a relevant resource to be aware of, though, because it can still be purchased, individual organisations, and for advocacy reasons, just to point to the fact that Queensland has made this commitment, this investment in whole of sector education. It's always good to know what other places are doing. You've got FOMO and other states and territories wanting to show up in similar ways. So we do encourage folks from all states and territories to check out our main training page that's up on the screen, rather than the Queensland specific one if you'd like to learn more. Queenslanders, fellow Queenslanders, we really hope lived and living experience leaders like yourselves will campaign hard for individual organisations, peak bodies, funders, and whole sectors to take up this free opportunity. Free opportunity. We've got champions packs, we've a whole bunch of messaging and some resources to assist you to champion effectively. We've also got specific resources for folks both from Queensland and from interstate, so come and have a yarn. We've got a table, grab some flyers. We'll get this party started. Though back to the broader context, the most critical take home from my perspective is that we can't advance, we can't protect ourselves, the authenticity of our work, or foster the transformational impact that's possible until everyone around us has some basic understanding of who we are, respects what we bring, and accepts why it matters so very, very much. There is rapid workforce development occurring, including some excellent initiatives, but the education piece is not as well established or foundational as it needs to be. If we continue to grow our workforces from a place of fuzzy understanding or conditional acceptance by others, we will continue to face the same psychological hazards and limited ability to guide systems transformation that frustrates and damages us today. We need to bring people along, engage their interest, and show them what's in it for them. We need to win over hearts and minds, and we do that by using messaging that lands and sharing the compelling evidence that underscores how utterly and indisputably necessary this work is to the creation of services and systems that actually meet their remit. So, this is my sincere plea that whether you have been aware of and advocating for whole of sector lived and living experience literacy for years, or your focus is typically on other issues, that this becomes a vital lever, a vital conversation that underpins all discussion of lived and living experience workforce development. That collectively we promote and point to accurate depictions that explain what we bring, encourage investment of time to truly understand, and ultimately embed respect and high value for our unique knowledge base in all workforce development going forward, building from bedrock. Thank you. So, in line with the style today, I was asked to provide some questions, and they're up on the board, but I'm just going to run through them quickly. So, question one: what notable differences have you seen when an individual has built strong understanding of lived and living experience concepts and practices? And when I say an individual, I mean not our mob, but other folk who are not from the lived experience space. Two, what notable differences have you seen when an organisation has built strong understanding of lived and living experience concepts and practice? Or if you haven't seen either of those things, what do you imagine the differences would look like? And question three, what resources, spaces, relationships, partnerships, or opportunities can we leverage to create more wide-scale and consistent understanding based on how we define our values and practice? Thank you.